Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Thandi Modise, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Ubabu Amos Masondo, Deputy President David Dabede Mabuza, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, leaders of political parties in our Parliament, Your Majesties and traditional leaders, and honorable members and ladies and gentlemen. Over the course of the last week, since the State of the Nation address was tabled here in Parliament, members of Parliament and indeed the people of South Africa have participated in a vigorous debate on the state of our nation. It has taken place here in the House, on radio, in newspapers, social media, in homes, in taxis, and taverns over the past few days. The debate has demonstrated the diversity of views and experiences in our country as people expressed themselves on what was articulated here at this platform. It has at times also demonstrated the divisions that still exist across our land and our body politic. Yet no matter how strongly we may differ, no matter how fiercely we may debate, we remain united, all of us, in what we said and we articulated. We remain united in our desire for a better future for all the people of our country, and that I find heartening. On this occasion, as we reflect on the debate that has taken place, it is worth recalling the words that we together chose to inscribe in the preamble of our Constitution. And in that preamble, we said the following: "We, the people of South Africa, recognize the injustices of our past, honor those who suffered for justice and freedom in our land, respect those who worked to build and develop our country, and believe that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity." We continued to say, "We therefore, through our freely elected representatives, adopt this Constitution as the supreme law of the Republic so as to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. Lay the foundations for a democratic and open society in which government is based on the will of the people and every citizen is equally protected by law. Improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of each person. And build a united, democratic South Africa able to take its rightful place as a sovereign state in the family of nations." Honorable members, it is important that we recall this preamble in its entirety, not only because it correctly and clearly characterizes who we are. It also talks about our past, but just as importantly, it also describes the kind of society that we seek to build. It is what unites us and what must guide and inspire us as we grapple with the challenges of the inheritance of our past, as we also try to make sense of our present and work to determine our future. It cannot be gainsaid that apartheid was inherently a crime against humanity. It was a crime against the oppressed people of South Africa, even before it was so declared by the United Nations in 1973. And the United Nations, the family of nations of the entire world, is made up of people from all over the world, and they could never have been hoodwinked. They could never have been deceived or influenced by anyone. They knew, as they looked at this country, that this was a country where a great crime was being committed to the majority of against the majority of the people of South Africa. So apartheid was so immoral in its conception and so devastating in its execution that there is no South African living today who is not touched by its legacy. I would even go on to say that to deny this, in my view, is treasonous. Our responsibility, therefore, as the public representatives who are gathered in this House, as the public servants of our people, as leaders, as citizens, is to be resolutely committed to build a society that stands as the antithesis of the humanity of our past. It is our responsibility to build a genuinely non-racial society in which all South Africans have an equal claim to rights, to citizenship, and to the wealth of this beautiful land. For us, non-racialism is not the product of our negotiated transition. It is a fundamental and immutable principle that defines the character of our democratic nation. Madam Speaker, Honorable Chair of Council of Provinces, I am grateful to those honorable members who participated in this debate, most of whom engaged meaningfully and constructively with the issues covered in the State of the Nation address. Notwithstanding our differences, there were a good number of members of this House who were able to find some issues that they thought were steps in the right direction. So it was not all negative. A number of the people who spoke, and I listened very carefully, even those who were most critical, even those who kept saying, you have failed, you have done this and so forth, you have not achieved, they did find a gem or so in the State of the Nation address, and that is wonderful. Through their contributions, these members have demonstrated across party lines that this is indeed a parliament of the people, firmly committed to representing the interests and the needs of all our people. An exchange that took place in this House led to some in our country writing to me, saying, "Dear President, I text you with a heavy heart. I am most saddened as a woman. The use of gender-based violence as grist for the gossip mill in your parliament is one that has weighed heavily on me. The weaponization of gender-based violence is an insult to the millions of women who are victims of this national crisis. And she goes on to say, I dream of a nation where our leaders use the platform to speak about solutions on gender-based violence, gender inequality and femicide, as opposed to using it to settle political scores. This social crisis is a reality for many women, not just in our country, but all over the globe. The mention of a person who has passed away in Parliament yesterday evening was unjust, unnecessary, and spine-chilling. It was raw and inconsiderate. I am deeply saddened by the manner in which events unfolded. Close quotes. Now, this message succinctly addresses what happened in this House regarding this matter. And the exchange we had served to politicize and in a way also to trivialize the national crisis of gender-based violence. At a time when we are called upon as a nation, all of us, to intensify and deepen the struggle to end all forms of violence perpetrated by men against women. The statements made and the purpose they were intended to serve were not really good. They undermined the resolve of this House that we demonstrated in the joint sitting that we had in September. We all met here solemnly committed to addressing this issue. I think this is something that we should, Madam Speaker, Chair of Council of Provinces, apologize to South Africans for the manner in which this matter was debated. But let us agree that we should never again allow such an important issue to be used in a way and in this way and reaffirm our shared and unwavering commitment to use all means at our disposal to end gender-based violence and femicide against the women of South Africa. Since I announced the Emergency Response Action Plan last year, working together with civil society, we have made important progress. We have improved access to justice for victims and survivors. The South African Police Service has confirmed that all police stations have sexual assault evidence collection kits. I have been to some of these police stations, notably the one I visited in KZN, and I was satisfied that indeed they do have these kits. We had complained here that not all police stations have these kits, and I know that the Minister of both Health and Police are working very hard to continue re-kitting our police stations. They have prioritized backlog cases related to gender-based violence and established the Cold Case Task Team. They have analyzed over 3,600 dockets on sexual offenses, and more than 60% of these have been reopened for further investigation and referred to the senior public prosecutors. The Department of Justice and Correctional Services have vetted more than 11,300 government personnel working directly with children and mentally disturbed persons since the Emergency Response Action Plan was implemented. That is a big number of people to go through a vetting process. It has been done. We are making progress in establishing a visible and sustained multimedia campaign to raise awareness around gender-based violence and change behavior as well. We have appointed 200 social workers, and I'd like us to appoint more because we have many social workers in our country who remain unemployed. We need to bring them into employment so that they can do the social work that they were trained for. And we are training health professionals and social service practitioners on post-violence care and trauma debriefing. The National Prosecuting Agency has identified areas where more Tutuzela centers will be established, including in Kredok, Kwavuma, Harangua, Paarl, and Tzani. We are making progress on the economic inclusion of women through the programs like She Trades Initiative, the efforts of various departments to ensure that 40% procurement, what government procures, goes to women, and the prioritization of women as beneficiaries of land reform. Now, I would like to call, yes, land reform, would like to call on the private sector that they too must follow suit. As they procure goods and services, they must have a set aside that will help to empower the women of our country, because they too are capable. But we will all agree that much more still needs to be done. As a nation, let us have the courage and the commitment to bring an end to this violence. Madam Speaker, the State of the Nation address is about the immediate and pressing task of the inclusive growth we want to achieve for our people. At its most basic and essential, inclusive growth is about changing people's lives for the better. While we can use economic jargon and track metrics like GDP growth, debt ratios, and levels of gross fixed investment, the most important measure of our progress is the impact that these efforts should have and are also having on the lives of South Africans, especially the poor. The substantial infrastructure investment that we announced last week will be a catalyst for economic activity and will make our economy more competitive. But it will also make a direct and immediate contribution to lowering the cost of living and improving the quality of life for millions of South Africans. The Infrastructure Build program makes public transport safer and more reliable. It makes the school environment more conducive for learning, be it in the form of building bridges so that our young children can cross rivers as they go to school. Some of the photographs that many of us have been seeing with young children struggling to cross rivers to go to school are heart-rending. And this is the Infrastructure Build program that we want to see in our country to bring an end to this inhumanity that continues to be perpetrated against the young people in our country. The infrastructure will also improve the quality of health care. It will make broadband more accessible and affordable. It will make rivers, as I was saying, safer for school children to cross. It will provide decent living quarters for students and make it easier for small-scale farmers to have access to markets. Earlier this week, we met the representatives of several finance institutions, both domestic and international, who were enthusiastic about the potential for infrastructure development in South Africa. We were able to roll out to them precisely the projects that we have. Dr. Cyril Ramaphosa in my office, who's heading the investment and infrastructure effort, working together with Minister DeLille, has brought together a number of professionals like engineers, and we are rebuilding capacity that had weakened in our country. And the financial institutions that we had said, They believe that our story for infrastructure rebuilt in our country is attractive enough, and the 700 billion rand that we have put up is the type of amount that they can match, and we can then start seeing the yellow equipment around the landscape of our country once again. I have no doubt it will happen. So they are committed to work with us to develop blended financing options, but also to mobilize, as I was saying, the skills that we will need to execute infrastructure projects. I agree with honorable members who say that we need to be more innovative in our approach to infrastructure through, for example, on embarking on things or initiatives like build, operate, and transfer, where we mobilize private capital to meet a public need. As we work towards collaborative solutions to our country's socio-economic challenges, we are encouraged by the development of the impact investment industry. The Coalition Impact Investing South Africa defines impact investing as a strategy or tool where risk, return, and impact are optimized in order to finance businesses that address the Sustainable Development Goals. We wish strength and success to Impact Investing South Africa and its partners as they work towards organizing the Global Steering Group Impact Summit to be held in South Africa later this September. We also welcome the work underway by the pension fund industry for the development of new investment vehicles that will channel assets under management towards socio-economic development. Our focus on infrastructure extends beyond our borders. During the course of the chairship of the African Union, we will prioritize the development of infrastructure that is so vital to economic integration, the building of roads, rail lines, ports, telecommunications, networks that will link African markets to each other. That is important. The employment that will be created through these investments that are being made in advanced manufacturing, agro-processing, infrastructure, mining, services, tourism, hospitality, and other sectors will begin to lift families not only in our country but also on our continent out of poverty. You could say that, yes, we are in the preparatory stage. We are preparing the ground to do what Minister Patel said, to have the planting season, and following the planting season, there will be the harvest season without any doubt. It will happen. This will give young people an opportunity to put their skills, their capabilities, and resourcefulness to productive use and to earn the income that will transform their lives as well. Our deliberate program to provide substantial additional support and opportunities to small and medium businesses contributes to Black economic empowerment by directing resources to people who have not been able to participate in the economy. Growth improves revenue collection, reducing the deficit and government's reliance on borrowing. This benefits the poor as more resources are available for investment in infrastructure, education, healthcare, small business support, and other areas. It will enable us, amongst other things, to increase our investment also in early childhood development, which, as we speak, now reaches well over 1.2 million children.
This is where we say goodbye to our SABC3 viewers, but we do continue broadcasting from Parliament right now.
A capable state that is staffed by and managed by people who are fit for purpose. As Premier Job Mokgoro said, capability deals with the structures, the processes, systems, and governance instruments at a macro level, and capacity deals with human resources and skills necessary for driving state machinery. Over the course of the last 2 years, we have appointed qualified and capable people to lead several strategic public institutions as well as state-owned enterprises. And we are firmly committed to only appoint people with the requisite skills, because that is also what our people need: knowledge and experience, and to hold them accountable for their performance. That is what's important. Strengthening local government is an important part of building a capable state that makes a meaningful difference in the lives of ordinary citizens. I welcome the broad support for the district development model as an intervention to improve the pace, the quality, and the reach of service provision. Honorable Sheikh Emam invited me to come with him to see instances of service delivery failure and the appalling conditions under which some communities live. And I shall do so. I also want to invite him to accompany us when we begin implementing the district development model in a number of these areas where we are going to use this model to improve local government and to ensure that service delivery is in the order that our people expect and anticipate. We must ensure that our visits to areas beset by service delivery challenges go hand in hand with developing plans to address these challenges. Our role is not merely to observe, but our role is also to mobilize all the capacity of the state, of business, of communities, and all key role players to fix people's problems. Under the district development model, all 3 spheres of government will coordinate, as Minister Dlamini Zuma said. It will integrate their services as well as delivery plans and budgets. And we will now begin to have one plan for the entire country, which will run through from national, provincial, district, as well down to the municipal level. Communities and businesses will be able to also participate in guiding developments taking place in their areas. Next week, we will be having a meeting of the President's Coordinating Council where all provinces and our 44 districts, as well as our 8 metros, will meet for the first time jointly together to discuss the district development model and begin the process of evolving one plan for one country. Through such collaboration, we will be able to consolidate our approach to government as an interdependent and interrelated system. We continue our efforts to change the spatial architecture of our past, promoting development in areas that have long been neglected. The development of a new city around Lanseria should provide a model for building new cities elsewhere in the country, in high-growth areas such as Lephalale, or in areas with great potential like in the Northern Cape. So when we embark on this process of changing the apartheid spatial architecture, yes, we need to have in our mind that we should build new cities. That's what other countries have done as they have changed the trajectories of their countries from a sad past, be it war, be it anything that has served to take their countries down. So we should be brave, we should be bold, we should have foresight and be able to change this architecture that we were bequeathed by apartheid. Yes, one of our members here in debate said, we were bequeathed this apartheid architecture by those who formed the Union of South Africa in 1910, and we still live with it. And in large measure, that is correct. And we need to change that. And he raised the point about, do we need, it was Honorable Shivambu, shouldn't we now start looking at having a parliament, even a solid government precinct, where every South African has easy access? Now, that too is a debate and a discussion that we should have in our country. Some research is being done in that regard, and work will then ensue. This, in many ways, will help us to start migrating from what apartheid built up in our country as the apartheid machinery started grinding the lives of our people into nothingness. We continue to rebuild the critical institutions that were eroded by state capture. We have allocated substantial additional resources to the National Prosecuting Authority to fill critical vacancies and allow for the capacitation of a depleted prosecution service, enabling the NPA to advertise over 800 posts towards the end of last year. The NPA is a critical component of the criminal justice system that needs to have the means to contribute effectively to the fight against crime, to tackle serious corruption related to the capture of our state institutions. The NPA's new investigating directorate has been working closely with law enforcement, with SARS, with the Financial Intelligence Center, with the SIU, the Reserve Bank, and private sector, and engaging with the Zondo Commission as the work continues. We have established the SIU Tribunal to fast-track the settlement of civil claims and the recovery of stolen funds arising from the SIU investigations. And while Eskom and Transnet have between them recovered more than 2.3 billion in monies lost to corruption, we know that this is just a fraction of what has been lost to state capture. We would like to see more monies that were lost being recovered, and they will be recovered as we move forward. We are determined that all these funds must be found and must be returned, no matter where in the world we need to go and find them and bring them home. We are determined that all those who have stolen money from the people and all those who continue to steal money from the people should face the full might of the law. Because South Africa is a state where there is rule of law. A prosperous nation depends on all citizens having access to quality health care. The NHI is a vital and necessary step towards that goal. It is about ensuring that the funds we spend annually on comprehensive health care under NHI results in a better level of health care to our people, in standardized services, and in better health care centers. It is about ensuring that our parents and grandparents, our children, and indeed ourselves receive proper treatment in well-run facilities run by professionals regardless of where we live and how much or how little we have. For every South African to receive an equal standard of quality health care is good for social cohesion. For all of us, and ultimately, with a healthier population, good for our economy as well. We are clear that the pace and the scale at which the we implement the NHI will be determined by the means at our disposal. As we improve the quality of our public health system, as we work to improve access, we must apply ourselves with even greater effort to bring an end to AIDS as a public health threat to our country. We are within reach of the goal of 90-90-90, where at least 90% of HIV-positive people know their status, 90% of these people are on treatment, and 90% of those on treatment have undetectable viral loads. The South African National AIDS Council is driving the broad strategic plan to achieve these goals and to turn the tide against TB in our country. This includes targeted prevention, efforts aimed at vulnerable populations, including adolescent girls and young women. It further strengthens our response. In strengthening our response, we call on public representatives to promote awareness and to step up prevention efforts on HIV and TB. Similarly, public representatives are urged to work with government and its social partners on the impact of non-communicable diseases on society as well as on the economy. As some honorable members have noted, land reform is an essential part of our inclusive growth. Unless we change the patterns of land ownership in South Africa, unless we give all South Africans access to land for agriculture, for commerce, for housing, we will not only be perpetuating a grave injustice, but we will also be constraining the economic potential of our land and our people as well. The lack of land is, alongside the lack of skills, one of the greatest impediments to economic growth and prosperity in our country. And it is for this reason that we are undertaking a program of accelerated land reform that focuses not only on redistribution, restitution, and tenure reform, but also on the support that beneficiaries need in the form of training, finance, extension services, and the implements to be successful farmers. And we will admit that we erred in the past by giving our people land through the restitution and redistribution processes without giving them adequate support. This time round, they will get adequate support so that they can work the land. We support the amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution and are drafting a new expropriation bill to clarify the circumstances in which land may be expropriated without compensation. Now, this is just one of the mechanisms that are available to government to effect redistribution. Far from undermining property rights, these changes will broaden the property rights of all South Africans. That is precisely what the Constitution, if you read Section 25 carefully, and I urge all of us to read Section 25 carefully, because it is about extending land tenure to South Africans. It is not about extending land tenure to some South Africans, as has always been the past. And as we have said in the past, this process is going to be handled in terms of our Constitution. It's going to be handled in terms of the rule of law. land grabs will not be allowed to happen in our country. Now, the measures we announced establish a platform for sustained and inclusive growth. It is ludicrous to suggest, as some members have, that these measures are intended to serve the interests of just one party. They are measures that extend the benefits of economic and social development to all South Africans, particularly the poor and the vulnerable of our people in this country. Over the course of the last 25 years, we have extended access to all South Africans, regardless of political affiliation, to housing, to electricity, to water, to education. And as this was being done, please listen carefully. Not a single one on the ruling party side went around and said, do you want education? Are you a member of the ANC? No, that did not happen, because as we do this, we do it in terms of the prescripts that are enshrined in our Constitution. And our Constitution endears us as a government to serve the people of South Africa as a whole, and not some South Africans. We are firmly committed to the path of economic reform that we have embarked upon. We are removing red tape to reposition our economy, working with the private sector and with labor to address the specific blockages that hamper the growth of companies. And we refuse to be reckless. We will not, as some honorable members have suggested, simply switch off Eskom's life support, for to do so would be to plunge our economy and our country into chaos. We have a clear roadmap to restore Eskom's financial and operational position and to place our entire energy sector on a new trajectory of sustainability. As we address the immediate challenges and undertake the urgent tasks of the present, we are taking bold steps to stand the country in good stead for the future. Our decision to establish a sovereign wealth fund, even at a time of great economic difficulty, is an exercise of our responsibility to future generations. Madam Speaker, Honorable Chairperson of Council of Provinces, listening to some of the speakers in this debate, one could be forgiven for thinking that South Africa was trapped in an inevitable downward spiral. Despite the grave challenges we face, we are making progress. We are not hiding from our problems. We are acknowledging them. We are confronting them. And in so doing, we are establishing a firm foundation for growth. I was impressed by an article written recently by Mark Ashton, a former financial journalist. And among other things, he said the following: much like we need to fight back against corruption, fake news, and other social ills, we need to fight back against pessimists talking South Africa down. Now, every time this type of pessimism raises its head, we must respond. Citing several success stories, he says, these are not the stories that make it onto Facebook or Twitter, because sharing good news is not algorithm friendly. If you need a daily reminder that your life sucks, write it on a post-it and stick it on your mirror. We have to push back, he continues. Mark Ashton continues. We have to push back against negativity at every turn. We have to show that the inches are all around us and we are actively seeking them out. It is not the responsibility of government, business, labor, and media. It's our personal responsibility. We can and we will. End of story, he writes. Madam Speaker, we have the means to build a better South Africa. We have the resources, we have the capabilities, we have the people. We have the will and we have the determination. Yet, we will not succeed unless we work together. It is our shared responsibility to harness the boundless potential of our country to build a firm and durable social compact for inclusive growth and transformation. But to do so means that we need to rebuild the bonds of trust between us. It means we need to confront the suspicion, the hostility, and the misunderstanding that is so prevalent across society. We need to rebuild trust and respect each other within this parliament. We need to strengthen the ties between the people of this country and those of us who have been elected to serve them. We need to rebuild trust between employer and employee, between man and woman, between parent and child. It is only by affirming each other, by recognizing each other's essential integrity and humanity, that we will be able to restore the covenant of which Nelson Mandela spoke of 25 years ago, the covenant on which our free and united democratic nation is founded. The debate on the State of the Nation address has drawn to a close. Now is the time to implement. As Martin Luther King Jr. said, we are now faced with the fact that tomorrow is today. We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. In this unfolding conundrum of life and history, there is such a thing as being too late. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is the time for vigorous and positive action. Now, I want to deal with a matter which I started dealing with earlier. And I want to deal with it with the sensitivity that it requires. The matter that was raised by Honorable Malema here. Now, in raising this matter, he raised it in 2017 and said that the president used to assault his first wife, Hope Ramaphosa. Now, Hope Ramaphosa responded and said that is not true. Honorable Malema here stood and made an allegation. But before that, an allegation was made against him by a member of the African National Congress. And Honorable Malema, as the allegation was made against you, I felt for Mandwa, your wife. Because it was uncalled for, I must say. It was improper, it was not correct for it to be raised. And if I can offer an apology to you about this, I would like to, because it was uncalled for. And Mandwa responded. You have raised the issue of my late former wife, Nomazizi. She is not here to respond for herself. And as I read in the piece that I dealt with earlier about this text that I got. This young lady evoked a sense that should really mean something to us, that we should not resort to using issues such as these, as it was used also against you, to politicize and to trivialize an important issue that affects so many women in our country. All of us need to engage in this struggle against gender-based violence. And I want to say, I am a father of daughters. I'm a grandfather of granddaughters. I'm a husband. I'm a brother to a sister. And I also have in my cabinet, 50% of the people who are in the cabinet are women. And I have members of parliament who are women. And we have South Africans, majority of whom are women. And these are the people who all of us must stand up and engage in the fight against gender-based violence for. These are the people that we must serve. We must engage in this fight and make sure that we bring gender-based violence to an end. And we do so in our lifetime. And as we do it, we must have respect for one another, but we must also have respect for the women of our country. That as we do what we have to do to engage in this fight against gender-based violence, we do it with great sensitivity towards them and their families. And my heart goes out to Mandwa and your family, Honorable Malema. And I do hope that my member of parliament on this side, because we must not politicize this issue of gender-based violence. We must, all of us as men, stand up and fight against gender-based violence. Thank you very much.
Order, honorable members. I thank the
Honorable Deputy
President.
Chair. Honorable Deputy Chair. Chairperson, with due respect, please. And respect to the President as well. Chair, can I proceed? I will be very brief.
Honorable Malema, we are at the end of the state of the
I understand.
Yes.
I understand. I want to say to the President. No. Now, if they refuse me to speak, there is no problem. That's what they did to me. Chair, my wife was insulted in front of the President during the State of the Nation. Nothing was said. My wife was insulted again 5 days after, next to the President. Nothing was said. Only when I started speaking did people start speaking. I want to say to you, Mr. President, that, and I said this under record, on record, under oath, that I've never assaulted any woman, and I will never do that.
Honorable
Now,
Malema, yes.
President, yes.
Chairperson.
Now, President,
Chairperson.
I want to extend my...
Honorable Malema, can I please?
Yes.
Can I please ask you to sit down?
No, I want to extend my...
Order, Chairperson.
Can I please ask you to sit down?
Order.
But before you rule me out,
Please.
just listen to me.
One item here. Order.
Please sit down, Honorable
Point
Malema.
of order, yes.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I now thank the Honorable President, and that, honorable members, concludes the debate on the State of the Nation address and business for the day. The joint sitting is adjourned.
He wants to shine.
Sit down.
All right.
Well, there you have it. That's the end of the response really to the debate on the State of the Nation address. We've seen President Cyril Ramaphosa there concluding his response to all the issues